Hello and welcome to all. At a time when North Korea is regularly dying of hunger and its poor inhabitants are languishing in extreme poverty and global isolation, the big boss and his junta clique are living in the most revolting opulence. Kim Jong Un has in fact monopolized almost all the country's wealth and resources and has been careful to redistribute the crumbs to his regime cronies. We are literally talking about billions of dollars stolen by the Supreme Guide, which feed his numerous bank accounts in Switzerland and which allow him to lead a pharaonic lifestyle. And while the corruption gangrenes the highest spheres of the state, and that Kim Jong Il does not cease posting his rodomontades, the people suffer from famines and malnutrition. Just imagine, even though the luxury champagne flows freely on the tables of the regime's dignitaries, half of the population does not even have access to drinking water. Faced with such a sum of iniquities and injustices, we decided to carry out a small investigation in order to highlight these flagrant disparities which undermine North Korea. So make yourself comfortable and buckle up, because we are going to fly directly to Pyongyang in first class. It's no secret, except for Polichinelle himself, that North Korea is one of the poorest countries on the planet. Because even in the absence of official statistics, it is very easy to measure the extreme indigence of the population and the pangs of misery that it is undergoing. Indeed, the rare information which leaks from the country makes state of a people on the verge of suffocation because of the very great poverty and the ultra-severe laws which govern them. It is estimated that in North Korea, more than 40% of the population lives below the poverty line. But what you may not know is that the poor North Koreans literally live like slaves in the pay of the regime. The government controls almost every aspect of their lives, including their work assignments and the nature of the jobs they are to do. Most of these jobs are agricultural or construction jobs, which are totally exhausting and tiring, and which only benefit the state. The latter pays its workers with crumbs, or sometimes even with simple food stamps that barely allow them to survive. From time to time, the regime in Pyongyang even goes so far as to requisition these poor people to work for free, under the guise of national interest. Of course, the latter cannot refuse, because otherwise they would expose themselves and their families to harsh and violent reprisals from the government. These unfortunate people will have to devote themselves exclusively to the construction and repair of large roads and highways, as well as other buildings for military use. All this only for the glory of the regime and its leader, without being able to be paid or even hope one day to use these same road infrastructures that they sweat blood and water to build. Indeed, it is literally forbidden for North Koreans to drive cars, or any other motorized vehicle for that matter, and they can only own a simple bicycle at best. Only the dignitaries of the regime and their relatives can drive a car. The people only have to walk. This may explain why there is no obesity in North Korea, except for the supreme leader, who is very fat compared to his people. But the real reason behind the thinness and the stuntedness of the poor North Koreans is the chronic malnutrition from which they suffer since their earliest childhood. According to some NGO reports, more than a quarter of North Koreans do not have access to sufficient food, and children are of course the first to be affected. Because it is the state that rations and distributes food to the people, and it must be said that the meals it offers are far from being copious. The food rations are so meager that many North Koreans have to buy food from the black market to survive. The food offered by these clandestine merchants is absolutely not famous and generally consists of rice and corn cooked with all the sauces. But this is nevertheless enough to avoid starving, as during the terrible famine that hit the country in the 1990s. In spite of this, it is still estimated that more than 10 million children suffer from chronic malnutrition and stunted growth. That is to say, 1 in 5 North Korean children. Of course, these figures do not take into account unforeseen events, such as natural disasters that strike the country. In such circumstances, entire families are left without any shelter, and their children, already underfed, succumb to the horrors of starvation. Even drinking water is a luxury in Kim Jong Un's country, since half of the North Koreans living in rural areas do not have access to it. The droughts that follow one another in the country make things worse, causing shortages of products that were already in short supply. The lack of water and food, combined with a completely failing and archaic health system, means that infant mortality is very high in the country. Epidemics of tuberculosis ravage young children who are malnourished, and the country's few hospitals are sorely lacking in medicines and medical supplies. Even as the regime flaunts its nuclear power and pretentious space program, its people languish in misery and struggle daily with hunger and disease. However, North Korea is not a country totally devoid of natural resources, because even if poverty is literally endemic, its wealth is nevertheless well and truly present, and its mining subsoil abounds in treasures. North Korea is classified as the third largest producer of magnesite in the world, with nearly 10% of the world's production. It is also the fifth largest producer of graphite, with more than 6% of the world production. The country also has gold, silver, and platinum mines, as well as huge deposits of molybdenum, phosphates, and copper, from which tons of ore are extracted every year. But it is interesting to know that the money from these mines goes directly into the pockets of the supreme leader and his clique of fat generals. Kim Jong Un is indeed the main beneficiary of these transactions, which amount to billions of dollars. Of course, the young leader will redistribute a small part of it around him, thus favoring his close relations and his most loyal party acolytes. The few crumbs that remain of the cake will then be shared among the many courtiers of the regime, as well as the senior officials of the North Korean state. But for the poor average citizen, there will be nothing at all, not even the shadow of a candy cane or even a simple lollipop. The people must resign themselves to living in rudimentary huts and suffer in the excruciating pain of the cold for lack of firewood. Of course, the dignitaries of the regime, for their part, live in luxurious residences whose splendor could literally make you dizzy. And when they sit down to eat, it is only to enjoy the most refined and expensive dishes without worrying about those who are starving around them. Kim Jong Un's lifestyle is similar to that of a pharaoh of ancient Egypt, as he rules the country like an absolute monarch, disposing of everything and everyone. For one thing is certain, everything in North Korea belongs to him, from the smallest piece of land to the farmers themselves who cultivate it. And the voracious appetite of this ogre and his clique of generals is practically limitless, as his big belly and his chubby cheeks can testify. But it is especially in sumptuous palaces and expensive yachts that the young tyrant seems to spend the fortune of the people. Indeed, some images available on Google Maps show the superb residences of Kim Jong Un, built without the slightest moderation for luxury. Built near the port city of Wonsan, on the east coast of North Korea, this ultra-secret complex is the main residence of the young leader, who spends most of his time there. Similar to Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's prestigious residence in Florida, the Wonsan complex is a true haven of peace, with sumptuous villas and breathtaking natural scenery. The interior is as splendid as the exterior, since His Majesty the Emperor Kim Jong Un has only refined furniture, entirely embroidered and sewn by hand, in leather goods or in wood and precious metals. In short, a real avalanche of luxury and opulence, almost insolent. But this is not the only complex that Kim Jong Un owns, since it is estimated that he has built at least 12 of them throughout the country. And to move between his various homes, the young leader can borrow his magnificent Princess 95MY yacht, worth $7 million. But the taste for luxury does not date from yesterday for the young North Korean leader, since we can say that he fell into the pot of luxury when he was still small. Kim Jong Un was a great lover of Rolex watches and pairs of sneakers in his youth, and did not hesitate to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for these whims. But since he reigns as an absolute monarch over North Korea, the young leader literally bathes in luxury and opulence. And if the starving people subsist only on meager portions of rice cooked with all kinds of sauces, Kim Jong Il hardly deprives himself of the best and most expensive gastronomic dishes on the planet. His pork chops come directly from Denmark, while his caviar comes from Iran. And if there is no fresh fruit in North Korea, no problem, because the young leader immediately brings melons from China and even beef from Kobe, directly imported from Japan by a specially chartered plane. Yes, the fat man is not plump by chance, and his love for food is only eclipsed by his love for drink. And here too, luxury is the order of the day, because the supreme leader hates cheap wines and liquors, preferring by far the rarest and most expensive spirits. Kim Jong Un is indeed an inveterate drinker of Hennessy cognac, whose bottles can reach literally exorbitant prices. It is estimated that the supreme leader has spent more than $147 million on alcohol and spirits since he became the head of North Korea. This astronomical figure makes Kim Jong Un the holder of a very sad record, because no one before him had spent so much money on drink in the history of mankind. So while the people are struggling to get access to clean water, the most expensive alcohol is flowing at dinners and special events in honor of the young alcoholic leader. The mafia clique of the North Korean regime and its fascist godfather are having a field day, squandering billions of dollars of the country's mining revenues and other resources. luxury cigarettes stamped with the initials of Yves Saint Laurent, high fashion clothes costing more than $10,000 each, or even the latest Italian or German cars. Nothing is too good to quench the thirst for luxury of the regime's dignitaries and their pot-bellied big boss. The latter even spent a little more than $1.4 billion just to acquire luxury cars, like this fabulous armored Mercedes S-Class Pullman or this splendid and majestic Rolls-Royce. A sum that makes you dizzy, just like the one he spent to furnish his wardrobe or his bathroom closet. The Supreme Guide has indeed bought $47 million worth of fur coats because he does not want to catch a bad cold. And that's it for today. What do you think of the insolent wealth of these privileged members of the North Korean regime, who lead literally pharaonic lifestyles while the rest of the population is starving? Tell us in the comments, and if you liked this video, don't forget to put a like and subscribe and activate the notifications. See you soon for new discoveries out of the ordinary.